This documentary was filmed and produced on the traditional unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
Yeah, I think he's got an exciting, adventurous story to tell, with lots of ups and downs, but he always gets back up. So, like, motivational, I guess, for like people who like get knocked down. If they watch this, then they'll like realize that it's still okay to get back up, and like you can fail and keep going.
Very eccentric. You know him for like 5 minutes and you know him. That's all it takes to really get an idea of what this guy is like. Very entertaining. Partly where I get it from. But yes, that.
Truth be told, I did not know before my children were born if I would ever be a parent, a father. Didn't know if I would ever have children. Wasn't even sure. Not that I didn't want them, but I didn't know if I would ever have that happen in my life. Their mother and I had only been dating a couple of years. But when she became pregnant with Madison in '94, yes, it was '94. It was scary. I was definitely scared because I didn't know, am I going to be a good father? Am I going to do all the right things? Am I going to help, raise our kid wonderfully? But I just will never forget that feeling when she was born and what went through me, how I could almost feel I know it was physical, but it felt like a physical shift in my being. I don't know how to explain it, but I was flooded with an emotion I really had never felt before. I had never experienced before. And it just floored me, and I loved it. I loved looking at her. I loved that this was, somebody I helped co-create. A life now exists, and it was just, instant love. And all I could think of is I just want her to always be happy. I just want her always to be happy and laughing and smiling and stuff. And then we became pregnant 3 years later with my son. And when I first saw my son being born and feeling the exact same way I did when my daughter was born, that was truly like hitting life's jackpot. So I actually had, I don't remember where I got them, but I had a bunch of trivia cards. And I think the assistant bar manager at the time, he had access to all the swag, like, hats and T-shirts that the liquor companies would give to promote their stuff. So he'd give me a bunch of the stuff, and I would start playing these just trivia games. I'd ask a trivia question, and first I make a challenge. Then I started to create new games for it. Then I can't even remember all the different little really weird and wonky games that I came up with. Because, of course, over the years of being a magician, I had a bunch of props and toys and all kinds of things that I made into games, just silly games. And it evolved until it became a full game show format that we called Dr. Strange's Game Show. That evolved at the club. Each Sunday, I would make it bigger and better, and the audience started growing and growing. And we finally thought, or I thought that, let's see if we could do this at another club. And I believe I did it down at Notorious. George Leger had come to one of the shows that night, and that's where he met his first wife. And they met at the game show, they fell in love and everything, so that was an interesting event there.
Steve does the Dr. Strange's Games show. And I go often to support Steve, and because I love doing it, it's fun and I'm good at it, right? So it was the day of the Molson Indy race in Vancouver. I remember it very clearly because I went down and watched the race and everything, and then it was over, and then I hung out and I waited, and then I went and saw Steve. And I'm sitting there, and Steve's doing his thing, and there's this woman, and this woman and I are looking at each other, and we did for almost the whole frickin' night until finally Steve just finally goes, and here we go, this is the last song of the night, guys. Like, kind of go for it now or never. And he's like trying to be, anyways, and it was almost that obvious. And she came over and asked me to dance. And that was my first marriage. Yeah.
But the big break, the really big break, was when we pitched it to, at that time, the #1 club in Vancouver called Richards on Richards. And the promotions manager at that time was a gentleman by the name of Howard Blank, who we pitched it to, and he booked it. And we got to do it there for 4 weeks, once a week for 4 weeks. And because we did it there and did it, I felt really successfully there, suddenly all the other clubs wanted to have it. And I started doing a circuit of the Doctor Strange's game show around the city. And I was having a lot of fun with it, and we were doing that for probably about 2 years. I even did it up at Whistler at one point. And then into the next facet of my game show, or my games career, was when my sister Cheryl had suggested, hey, you make games, you've been having a lot of fun with this. Have you ever thought about making a board game? At the time that I was working at Baker Street, I also still did a couple of nights a week down at the club in Gastown. And the club in Gastown at that time had one of those little, like a slot machine game, when the band was on, and I DJ'd, and the band would go on, and I go sit there, and I'd be playing on the machine, and and I remember I was sitting there, and I'm thinking, what kind of a board game? What kind of a board game can I come up with? And I suddenly the idea of a board game called Gambler's Paradise, like the whole thing came into my mind. I saw the game board and everything.
Well, I have actually accused Stephen of stealing my ideas, and on almost every occasion. And I wonder how we stay friends after all that. I think it's because we both know I'm joking and it's just fun. It's tradition. I think some of our humor is just tradition, that we say certain things and we don't take each other seriously for some of the ridiculous things we say. I have no idea how he invents them and how he has the time, the patience. When he did Gambler's Paradise, I thought, wow, that's a lot of work. And that's why I think it's funny, because I have no interest in ever inventing anything like that myself. So it's fun to say he stole it.
And so I literally spent probably the next 2 or 3 months designing the whole original prototype, which I'd love to show you, but has long gone. But it ultimately led to the construction of this game, Gambler's Paradise. And it was a lot of money was put into making this happen through a former partner, and his family helped put in a lot of money to make this happen. Unfortunately, it was such a behemoth of a game, it cost a fortune to really go into any kind of mass production. But I again had the belief that as soon as this hit the market, the world was just going to go nuts over it. And I thought, in my creative process at that time, I'm thinking, with all this fun to it, how could it not be a massive success? How could it not just be snatched up and go? But, we pitched it to a few companies, and none of them were interested in it. And this was just, I guess this is the mid-90s, and just the dawning of the computer age, where more and more things, and there was computer games. And, years after, I was thinking, as online games and computer games got more and more sophisticated, I thought, maybe one day we can resurrect this as a online type of a game. But one of the things that I learned is that if you want to, you got to come up with a really good game that is very inexpensive to manufacture. That's where you can, and if it's a great game, then you'll find the success you're looking for.
Steve, he's had a lot of things on the go. Board games, shows. Not everything has gone his way. And it's not from lack of trying. And I keep emphasizing that when him and I talk about things. I say, you know, you got to keep going. There's bumps in the road. It's like a roller coaster. There's leaps and valleys and all kinds of things.
Some advice I would give to those that have great ideas or have big dreams is that you're going to get a lot of no's before you're going to get a yes. And in a way, that's a blessing too, because it allows you to fine tune whatever it is you're working on. And I remember going out for job interviews. If I would get a no, that means I wasn't meant to have this, then the next great opportunity is just around the corner. So keep honing in on your craft. Take the no as no today, but potentially yes tomorrow. And there's tomorrow is always around the corner. Someone will say yes. And there have been so many great inventions and great people in this world that, and I can't even think of one, but I know because my mind right now is blank. However, how many no's did they get? Walt Disney, for one, is a great example of how many no's he got until he got a yes. And look, he's in everyone's living room.
But then that led to some pretty big opportunities, not with the game, but in part of the way that I wanted to promote it. At first, when I first started promoting the game, I used this as a symbol for wanna bet. You know, come play Gamblers Paradise, wanna bet. We even did a couple of fake commercials for it, you know, wanna bet, and we were thinking this will catch on, everybody doing this, wanna bet, wanna bet. Kind of led to me, you know, wanna bet actually sounds like a pretty cool name for a game show. So I created a game show called Wanna Bet. And I created giant dice, giant, you know, spinner board and stuff like that. Started doing it, and I was having a lot of fun with that. Ran that at a few clubs. And that, between Wanna Bet and Gamblers Paradise, actually led to one of the greatest opportunities I had had at that time, especially with games and game shows.
Is it a high card or a low card? High means 8 to ace, low is 2 to 7. Is it high or is it low? Why don't you tell them out? Is it high or is it low? He says high, the card is high. He's got at first level. You've won yourself a scored chocolate bar. He's got a scored chocolate bar, ladies and gentlemen.
The next big glimmer of hope for Gamblers Paradise was when I went to California, to the California gift show, but I went down there with Gamblers Paradise, but I'd already been running the game show Wanna Bet and Club, so I had that under my belt as well. When I was down in California, thanks to a friend of mine, a dear friend that I'd known for years, her name was Samra, and her husband was the grandson of a very famous Hollywood actor, and he had a business manager down there who we were trying to get in contact with the entire time we were down in California doing this gift show and stuff, and I was phoning him every day, no answer, no answer. And the last day, the day we were about to go to the airport, I called him again, and this time he answered. And I said, hey, this is who I was, and I have a board game and a game show. I have, you know, Gamblers Paradise and Wanna Bet. And he says, okay, let's meet tomorrow for lunch, blah, blah, blah. I said, oh, wow, this is great, because this guy had quite the reputation in Hollywood, good reputation, and stuff he had been involved with and done and who he was representing. So we canceled our flight, made it for another day or two away, and went and met him the next day, and he got all excited. He says, you've got a television show with your, it wasn't a television show, but you had a game show that could be for television, and you have a product. I think we can do something with this. So he made arrangements to get me back down to California sometime after for what is called the NAPD. It's a big trade show for all the television networks and producers and stars and everything all got together. Like it was right in the middle of the big hustle and bustle of the television industry. At this NAPD convention, he introduced us to the people behind All American Fremantle. At the time, they were called All American Fremantle.
So I remember at some point, Steve got very interested in games, and you know, he had a deal, I believe, with Fremantle, which is a huge company, you know, behind America's Got Talent and all that. And this is way back again. This is probably now the 90s or so. And he got really into game. He's a very creative person, and so he was creating games. And I'm not sure if the first ones were around bingo, but I know that bingo had a lot to do with it at some point. And you know, he had some success. He had some sort of a deal with this Fremantle television network to put together a pilot, I believe. I think he shot the pilot.
Fremantle Media, who had just bought Mark Goodson Productions, because Mark Goodson had passed away a few years before, so they bought up the majority of the television library of their games. And when they met me, they got a real kick out of Wanna Bet and how it worked, because they wanted to produce game shows for lotteries. Now, this was something totally new to me. I had no idea of anything like this. And they invited me to come to London, I think the following summer or that summer or whatever, because there was a lottery game show convention going there. They wanted to present my Wanna Bet to the lottery people out there for a new type of lottery game that had been created. So I had gone out there. I was supposed to only go for a week, but they decided they wanted me to host this version of it for the lottery people there. We had a lot of people coming to see it.
You also have $500 more for just being up here on the stage. Now, turn that $500 into $1,000 soon. We're gonna get all the rest of the numbers back up on the screen, and whenever you're ready, let's hit your big number here. So as long as you don't get a 2 and a 5, you're laughing. For $1,000, turn that 500 into 1,000, let it roll. He's got a 5, a 2. You still have 1 dice and you have $1,000, so you should be happy right now. You have $1,000 so far.
After I got back from London, they actually decided to do a pilot of Wanna Bet. And they shot that in California, and they invited me down to California. And that for me was the first ever seeing a show I created being made into a television pilot. And it was down in California. I was the producer. I was the creator of it. I got to be off stage. I was also the game show announcer. So I was at a little booth going, and please welcome, blah blah blah, whatever it is I was saying. But they built up this big beautiful set for my Wanna Bet game show, which they used, and it actually, this is cool. It actually aired in 2 places as a lottery game show in Russia. It played in Yekaterinburg, and I apologize for my mispronunciation, Yekaterinburg, and in Nizhny Novgorod. I'll always remember those 2 names. They actually aired that show, and it ran, but for a very brief period of time, because the lotteries there at that time were not organized, were not able to get the marketing of this new lottery game going. They weren't able to sell tickets. And with no tickets, there were no viewers. And with no viewers, there was no ratings, and et cetera, et cetera. And so it ran for a very brief period of time. In those 2 places, I actually had my game show playing on television in 2 locations in Russia.
Okay, so I have seen Stephen over the years be very excited about some really close opportunities to become how he would gauge successful, maybe in terms that of financial security and notoriety, maybe, and then he would get so close to some of those goals of his, and then something wouldn't just go into fruition like he had planned, and then he would be very subdued for a while and dejected, but he always had something else on the back burner. You know, it didn't last for very long, if I recall, because he always had other ideas, and he never gave up hope, but he was also realistic.
And while I was there, I learned of another type of lottery game show that was being done that kind of blew my mind. It was called a bingo game show, basically a bingo lottery game show. And I thought this was cool. And the shows that were there, I guess they were okay, but I felt that they were missing the mark. Like they weren't really connecting a game show concept and a bingo thing together. So on my way back from London, I thought, you know what, I can make a better bingo game show. And an idea, got into my head, and I built it. It was called Amazing Bingo. It was a very simple concept, but I felt it truly melded the bingo draw with a game show concept. It wasn't just here's some numbers, here's a game, here's some numbers, here's a game. I had the numbers actually make the game work, the game show part of it work, where each number would generate a move for the contestants on the game floor. And they shot the pilot here. And we had a couple of local celebrities who hosted and got a huge studio audience in, or a studio audience was brought in, 5 contestants. It was all a mock-up, but it looked fabulous. It looked absolutely fabulous. And this, again, extremely exciting for me to see my vision becoming an actual game show. The plan of it, once they had the pilot done and it was in the can, was it was being pitched to Germany or they wanted to put it into Germany because they already had a potential bingo game show that was going to be done in Germany and stuff, but they didn't like that format, and they thought My Amazing Bingo was a far better format, which felt great to have a company of that magnitude really like my show. And they took it there, and I was all excited, looking forward to what this could potentially mean for the start of my career.
And now, the world's most exciting interactive bingo lottery game show. It's time to play Amazing Bingo.
The show was pitched, but 2 weeks too late. Literally 2 weeks too late, because 2 weeks previous, when they brought it in, had been the previous show had gotten signed, and it was too late to change all the contracts and everything. It was really hard to take, because it was, again, that close to being, boom, the big open door and the access to resources to be able to do all the things I wanted to do and so on. And it never happened. And that was it. They stopped. They didn't bother even trying to pitch it anywhere else. They just let it go, and that meant I had to let it go.
I mean, Michael Jordan's coach said, don't get into basketball. In fact, Walt Disney, he wasn't creative enough. I mean, there's lots of those good ending stories, but there's a lot of people that, stopped. But if you stop, you're giving up. Don't stop. Reach, go after your goals.
My next huge opportunity came about. And this one, again, one of those shooting for the moon, biggest one possible, was when my manager actually set up a meeting with me and him in the office of the president of Sony Pictures Television at the time. Because the president and my manager were longtime friends. They'd worked together for years. So he was able to get an exclusive meeting with just me, my manager, and him in his office. And I meant another trip down to California. And I still have this binder to this day that has all these different game show ideas and game ideas. And I took it down there and I sat in his office and I showed him some of my ideas and concepts, and he was very impressed. He was so impressed, he literally said to me, he says, okay, it's just about, we're just getting into the Christmas season, because I guess it was near the end of November or beginning of January or beginning of December. And he said, we'll get you down here in January. We're going to sign you. He said, we're going to get you down here, get you under contract, and have you developing our game shows with us. Oh my gosh. Are you kidding? I'm literally having the president of Sony Pictures Television saying to me, they're going to give me this job making game shows. So needless to say, I came back from California higher than a kite, more excited than I'd been, I think, yet to that point. This was that moment, this was that call, this was that thing I've been dreaming of. One day I'm going to get that call from somewhere that's going to change my life, change my career. But this was it. This was actually him saying it to me. This was it. There's nobody above him to say, no, let's cancel this or whatever. I was being given the greatest opportunity ever of my career. I got back home, I got all excited. I'm telling my friends, my family. I even told my daughter that next summer we're going to go to Disneyland. This is going to be so amazing. And I'm waiting and waiting. I got through Christmas, we got through New Year's, and I'm, there's not a moment I'm not, like every night trying to go to sleep, I couldn't sleep because I was so excited about how my life is about to change. And the first week of January, I still hadn't heard anything yet. And I said, okay, everybody's still on holidays and stuff. But by the second week, I thought, okay, my manager still hasn't called. I better find out what's going on. I remember calling him up and saying, hey, Greenie, what's going on? Is this going? When does this start? Has he made a decision as to when I'm supposed to start or anything? And my manager says, he goes, oh, you haven't heard? And I go, heard? And that's when he says to me, Jeffrey has had a big fight with the top bosses. Had a big fight, no agreement, so he walked out and quit. And him walking out and quit was taking everything that he had said to me out the door with him. That was it. It was just done. But to me, the biggest, most crushing thing of that disappointment, of that heartbreak, wasn't even me. It was the fact that it had made me break a promise to my daughter, in that I ultimately wasn't able to take her to Disneyland, take the family to Disneyland. I think that it really hurt my daughter that I had, in her eyes, not just broken a promise, but had lied to her. So that one was really hard, and that one, that lasted for a long time, and I think it made my daughter Madison, it made her find it hard to trust, maybe not just me, but other people as well. She certainly did not take well to ever having anybody break a promise to her after that, because, I did it and I was daddy. She was 5 at the time, I guess, 5 or 6.
I know that he believed what he said, and obviously he had good intent and whatnot, but as a kid, at that young, you don't know that if somebody says that we're going to go to Disneyland, then it feels like we're going to go to Disneyland, and then it doesn't happen. And I feel like it happened more than once. So, but I know that his intent was there, and I know that's what he wanted to do, but it would have been nice to actually have if he had the tickets in his hand and was okay, we're going to Disneyland, not oh, next summer we're going to go, but you have a year for it to not actually follow through kind of thing. That single scenario, yeah, I have forgiven him, but I have a hard time when he has a new idea or a new venture or new anything. I kind of just wait until it's actually real before I actually get excited or believe him, and I think that's why he doesn't tell me a lot about his life.
She's 28 now. I'm pretty sure she's forgiven me, but because we have a great relationship. But I know that was the hardest part of that disappointment. As much as that was the greatest opportunity for my career, it was even more painful for me to know that I had broken a promise to Madison that I wasn't able to fulfill. So. In 1998, I had been asked to go to Noordwijk in the Netherlands by the first ever president of the lotteries to speak at a lottery game show convention. That was my first opportunity to make a bit of a name for myself in the lottery world. So that takes me to pretty much the end of the 90s. Just near the end of the 90s, though, although I had started to get this reputation, or at least had a background in creating bingo game shows, I ended up getting hired by a company here in Vancouver called Border Capital, which was wanting to develop bingo-related entertainment, specifically game shows, and they hired me on as creative director for the company. They gave me a fantastic wage, and that led me, that again started getting the excitement up again. Oh my God, I'm getting this great money. I'm going to get to develop my bingo games for this company. They were starting an online bingo game. This was in the earlier days of online bingo, so there was a huge market to start getting into. They had created a really cool interactive game show that I was a creative director and helped design and plan out how it would work and the functionality of it, even characters for it, and it was called Power Bingo. And it looked really good. It looked like it had a lot of potential.